Hello and welcome to the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. We bring you interviews from people who have conquered the trickiest of health challenges using the functional diagnostic nutrition philosophy and similar healing modalities. You're going to hear from experts who have been through the ringer with their health issues and yet managed to come out on the other side. You can always visit us at functionaldiagnosticnutrition.com, but for now, here is today's episode. All right, hello my friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. My name is Evan Transu, aka Detective Ev, and I will be your host for today's show, episode number 443 of the Health Detective Podcast. We are moving right along here, and we got a bit of a change up for you guys today. In terms of our normal guests, I think you're going to really like the change up, actually. And depending on how long you've been listening, you might recognize some of the phrases and terms we're going to throw out today. One of the reasons that it's so important as an episode is because I was talking to our guest beforehand, and I look at our community of FDNs and FDN trainees. And if you're not an FDN, that's fine. I think if you're watching this show, you'll still like this. But I look at our group in particular as being right on the line, man. Like, we are out there on the front lines of this health battle. We're helping people individually, but there's actually some other things that we can do in terms of awareness, in terms of gaining a little bit more knowledge about the political landscape and what is happening there, how we can vote if we agree with the things and want to move them forward, and then also how we can inform our clients on what's going on. We just saw a really amazing thing lately when, unfortunately, the government was trying to overstep again, and they're looking to take away the desiccated thyroids, like these thyroid medications that people use as a replacement for the standard pharmaceuticals. And our crew got together, and we're sending in so many votes. We're exposing it to thousands of extra people on our social media platforms. So please never forget that when a small handful of people get together, this isn't my quote, but a small handful of people get together, that is not only something that can change the world, it is the only thing that ever has. So with that said, two quick announcements before we talk to our guest. One, I want to invite you to our Health Space Unmasked event. That's going to be happening Saturday, September 6th. You'll see a QR code just pop up there. If you want to scan that, it's a free ticket. It's about 2 hours for that event. And this time is going to be about the gut-brain axis, neuroinflammation, and how it is affecting our mental health from kids to adults. This neuroinflammation epidemic is affecting our mental health. And Brendan Vermeyer, one of our probably most famous FDNs. He's out there lecturing to doctors. He'll be speaking at the conference that I'm going to mention in just a second. But he will be our presenter for Saturday, September 6th. So if you want a nice, chill, laid back event, it's free. You don't have to pay for the replays. You just want to show up, hang out, and talk to some people who are highly interested in health. Please join us there. If you just want the URL, or you're listening to this on audio, go to fdntraining.com/HSU, like Health Space Unmasked. That's fdntraining.com/HSU. And then my final announcement, if you're wondering, what's that conference that Brendan's going to be speaking at? That is HICS, the Health Intelligence Exchange Network, and that is going down for its second annual conference, this time again in sunny San Diego, California. That's October 9th through 11th of this year, 2025. I just talked to one of the organizers yesterday. They are not sold out yet, which is good for you, but they are significantly farther ahead than they were last year. So they are still expecting to sell out. But I would say we're recording this on August 27th. Don't hold me to this. Don't get mad at me if this wasn't true. I would say you probably still have a couple of weeks into September to figure this out to be safe. So what you want to do is scan the QR code or check our show notes if you're on the audio, and you can use the code SUMMER30 for 30% off tickets. If there are VIP tickets left, that does apply to them, and it also applies to the general admission. That's all caps SUMMER30. All right, let's get to our guest today here. I'm going to read his bio for you guys, and then we will start chatting with him here. Sorry, 1 second. Let me get this back up because I had to pull something else up. We got a lot to share with you guys today, so I hope that you have a notepad and you're ready to go. Michael LeVesque was the president and CEO of Vitamin Express Incorporated in San Francisco and the Bay Area for 36 years. He is the author of the Big Vitamin Dictionary and several other books. In March of 2020, he began the medicalfreedomamendment.org website. And the amendment has grown in its exposure and support through the last 5 years. The time is prescient for united action to begin lobbying and working politically for its adoption. Its necessity has never been more clear and urgent. The time is now. And, in a world where we are very politically divided, I love something that I think pretty much anyone that watches a show like this will be able to come together with. So, Michael, welcome to the show, and thanks for bearing with my announcements.
Thank you very much, Evan. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to say that I want to also thank Reed Davis, your founder of Functional Diagnostic Nutrition, for inviting this presentation of the Medical Freedom Amendment. It's a wonderful opportunity to share and promote it as a timely and critically needed amendment to the United States Constitution. We met at the National Health Federation's 70th anniversary celebration in Dallas, Texas, this past March. And it was a really wonderful event. It looks like they're going to be doing it again for the 71st celebration, also in Dallas, probably in March. So thank you very much. And I look forward to talking about the Medical Freedom Amendment because it's something that has been around actually for a long time. And it just never got put down into words, you might say. So it is the proposed 28th Amendment in 2 paragraphs, styled after the First and Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution, which are part of the Bill of Rights. And so this would be considered like the 11th Bill of Rights. And it's something that's really necessary. So if you'll bear with me, I'm going to actually read to you the amendment in its entirety. It shouldn't take but a moment, really, but it's important to see what we're talking about here. So this is how the amendment goes. All people have the right to secure their health in the manner they choose. That's the first most important part of the amendment. The next is Congress, President, state legislators, and executives, government agencies or departments shall make no law, rule, regulation, countermeasure, executive order, emergency declaration, or enter into any treaty or international agreement that impedes the individual's rights, your rights to informed consent, nor right to medical choice, nor freedom of medical choice. So the treaty provision of Article 6 of the United States Constitution should not apply in any way to this amendment. That's necessary because when we make treaties, those can actually override what we have in the Constitution. The second part all has to do with medical privacy and search and seizure, which is based on the Fourth Amendment. Because already that is possible by the government through certain means. So, nor shall the President, Congress, state legislators, and executives, government agencies, or departments make any law, rule, regulation, countermeasure, executive order, emergency declaration, or enter into any treaty or international agreement that impedes the individual's rights to medical privacy and freedom without individual and specific judicial warrant, supported by oath and affirmation of necessary cause to protect society from harm, describing the individual's condition and danger it presents. So these are a bunch of barriers that are necessary before the government could, let's say, force you to have a medical countermeasure, which was what the COVID-19 shots were. They weren't vaccinations, so unfortunately, you did not have informed consent. You were basically not really informed accurately because it was not a vaccination. It was a modified genetic organism, a GMO, because it was a modified RNA. And modified RNAs are what we use for modified genetically organisms. And the government did not go through its normal procedures of safety regarding that, and they just quickly mandated it. And they basically ignored and denied all of the other therapeutics that exist. And you in functional diagnostics, especially, know there are so many wonderful therapeutics that affect our health. So, medical freedom is the individual's absolute and inalienable right to autonomy over your body regarding all medical treatment. And the amendment presents a wall of opposition against government medical interventions to an individual, except under very specific and qualifying stipulations and conditions. So that's the first part of what's really important as a basis for going forward. So there is a real deep history about medical freedom. And um, the the Constitutional Convention that was held back in 1778, I believe, was petitioned by doctors to include medical freedom, the same as freedom of speech, freedom of medicine would be included, same as freedom of religion. For example, Dr. Benjamin Rush, who was a signer of the Declaration of Independence, he was a friend of Thomas Paine, personal physician to Benjamin Franklin and George Washington, and the nation's first Surgeon General. He, in fact, stated that unless we put medical freedom into the Constitution, the time will come when medicine will organize into an undercover dictatorship. However, for that to organize took some doing. And of course, what really happened is that the Flexner Report of 1910 had come out, and so being a document that looked at science in the 19th century of German materialism and vaccination and pharmacology as the only way to cure a person. It was only one sliver of medicine. But when you have the two richest men in the world backing it, which happened to be Rockefeller and Carnegie, then all of a sudden the government was controlled and ended up making this a law. And you saw huge number of differences that occurred. I'm just going to not continue talking and maybe give Evan a chance to ask some questions now.
Sure. Well, no, first of all, I really appreciate that explanation, because again, this is the stuff I wouldn't have been able to read this off the top of my head. I appreciated when you shared it with me on the phone, and I'm glad we got to take the time today. And you know what, Michael? So I'm just giving you the perception of someone that grew up, maybe not with social media, but we definitely grew up with the internet, and it's kind of funny because I don't know if you realize this, the average 20 something, if I were to talk to them about someone like Rockefeller or Carnegie, they kind of have a perception of these individuals. They don't know a ton, and I'm in that same boat, but like there's something that has been put into my mind along the lines of, oh, maybe like a Rockefeller didn't have our best intentions. So I wanted to ask you, as like a side point here, as someone like yourself who's researched this probably significantly more thoroughly than me, do you believe that when this was being introduced in the way that it was in the early 1900s, do you think that there was good intentions here, or was this really something that was set out from the beginning to just be a way to further control people and profit from them? And I'm just asking your opinion. I'm not saying we know 100% one way or the other, but I'm curious, was this good intentions at one point, or was this always kind of a bit diabolical from the beginning?
Well, I think that Carnegie and Rockefeller both had good intentions, but they were also oil magnates and transportation. And let's face it, pharmacology is based upon oil. So, coal tar products, things of that nature. So there was definitely a money aspect to it. And also, there's always this idea of trying to have just one answer. This is the answer, this sort of thing. What's interesting is that, you know, if it were possible for those founding fathers of liberty and independence that were there for the writing of the Constitution had foreseen the future of the medical abuses, for example, of Dr. Mengele, Joseph Mengele of Nazi Germany, which if they could have looked ahead 200 years into the future and saw this, it is most certain that medical freedom would already be included in the United States Constitution. So this is something that just, you have to remember that uh, the allopathic doctors, they used to get into fistfights over losing a patient. And they were really upset about homeopathy because homeopathy was gentle, it was safer, and actually it was more effective. So they were losing a lot of customers to homeopathy. They were losing so many customers. It was, they tried to block a homeopathic college in Chicago. And Abraham Lincoln was a big advocate of homeopathy. And he was actually uh, hired to help protect that so that they could go ahead and have the hospital. And he succeeded. And the American Medical Association was also founded at that time. And so you had a real conflict of interest, and that's fine. The problem is that in the process, because let's face it, allopathy has its place. Medical emergencies, surgery, they have come a long ways. But back then, they were not very good. It all had to do with emetics and bleeding and all kinds of things that were not pleasant for anybody and really not effective. And you had the great uh, division between um, uh, Duchamp. I'm trying to think here. Duchamp and Pasteur. There was really a major difference between those two, because what happened is, let me see if I can find a little something about that for you. Um, so, the, Beauchamp was for the terrain, and Pasteur was for germs. So you have two different theories. One is the microzymian theory, and the other is the theory of immunity. So you have cell doctrine versus vaccination. You have terrain theory versus germ theory. Germ theory is a monomorphism, which means it's just one cause is doing this. And if we can just find that one cause and stop it, all of a sudden, all health is good. Terrain theory is what they call pleomorphism. It involves a lot of things: acid, alkaline, pH, the electromagnetic charge, because that is pH, potential hydrogen. Hydrogen is the electrical molecule. It involves poisoning, all kinds of poisoning. It could be from soil, air, water, from wireless. Nutritional status. What is the nutritional status of the person? And that germs are not necessarily responsible or necessary for disease, in fact. So, what's interesting is that Louis Pasteur, on his dying bed, said that Beauchamp was right. But for some reason, that just has never never set well with everybody. So, uh, we have that situation. Um, I don't know if I answered your question very well, but
No, Michael, you did, because what I got from that, especially in the first half, was, there's two sides of it. It's not as sinister as some people make it seem, but it's also not without its own maybe selfish motivations as some others make it seem. And I go back and forth with my dad about this stuff a lot, just in a fun way. Like, I think he has too good of a heart, and he can't even comprehend that someone might do something a little bit negative. And then I'll show to him, when Monsanto wasn't under Bayer, how they got successfully sued for ghostwriting studies with Stanford scientists. And it's just so funny because my dad is such a good guy. He can't even comprehend that there are people out there with all this money and power that they can pay off scientists to more or less write fake studies. And then we get the end result of that, right? And then so you wonder how many of those have gone without anyone knowing. But then too, this is the thing. If any of us were to have all that money and power and 7 billion eyes on us, at least nowadays it's 7 billion eyes. I understand it wasn't that back then. But even a million eyes, it doesn't have to be anywhere close to a billion. Even a million eyes, there's no one person that is going to please everyone. So I'm sure if you and I were up there trying to do the best that we can, decent enough people as we are, there's still someone out there that would say, well, they had these motives and interests. So I like that perspective. I don't think anything's that simple. And it's important to understand these things, to understand how we got to where we're at now. I want to I don't mean to end that right there abruptly, but I do want to transition us just a little bit because I think this is super important too. And I wanted to talk about what medical freedom and the personal choice side actually mean if an amendment like this were to pass. And here's why I'm saying this. I'm not giving my opinion on this. And guys, if you're tuning in for the first time, welcome, by the way. We normally don't get into this kind of stuff that I'm about to get into, but I do need to ask this. Let's take a case like abortion. I think there's amazing people on both sides of that argument. I genuinely do. I think there are some people that absolutely believe that they are saving a human life by being pro-life. And I think that there are some people that absolutely believe that they are supporting women and the rights for them by being pro-choice. So I'm not arguing one side or the other. What I am bringing up, though, is in that debate, Michael, one of the things is what constitutes medical freedom? What constitutes a personal health choice? And then you can take this further with something probably more relevant to your world, like the COVID shot. So some would argue, even though I'm proud to say I definitely disagree with this one, the COVID shot, they would say, well, by you not taking it, you're potentially hurting someone else. And so that's why you have to take this. So I guess my question in all of this is, would the Medical Freedom Amendment help us define personal choice, medical freedom more, or would we still be dealing with some of the issues that we currently have where we don't always know how to define what truly constitutes a personal choice or a medical decision? Does that make sense?
I think it's makes a lot of sense, and it's a very important issue. In fact, um, you said so many different things that it's going to take me a while to try to.
Sorry, I have a tendency
No,
for
no,
that.
no. That's good because it covers quite a ground. And wow, when you talk like abortion is such a hot issue, uh, and it's politicized, which is crazy. It should not be politicized. It's a medical issue. It's a medical issue. I think that most women would prefer to, especially nowadays, they're trying to get pregnant and want to keep their child. But at the same time, there are medical situations, especially where it's very important that there is a medical intervention to save the life of the person. So I think that it's a non-issue to a great extent because it's a medical decision. And it's a decision of that person. The person still has body autonomy. Now, what happens is at what state do we say a fetus has body autonomy? And that's something that will have to be decided and debated out through science, because there are a lot of different ideas behind it. Some people say, at the moment of inception, you have a um, a person kind of thing. And science would say like, well, we can't quite say that. And so it's going to have to take this to look at it, but it's not political, it's scientific. Um, then way at the other end, you have people who say like, the spirit of that child does not actually, it remains around the whole body until the time of birth, at which point everything comes together. So you have two very different kinds of orientation on this. But let's face it, there, you know, uh, I've felt babies moving inside the womb, and it's a wonderful thing. And yeah, I think that there's definitely a scientific time that you just have to say, like, no, this doesn't work anymore. But if there is a medical problem,
Mhm.
then yes, you have to move forward properly. And that's when politics should not even be concerned with this whole issue. Now, that's the first point. Now, you made several other points, and I should have written them down because by now I've forgotten most of them. But
Well, and sorry, I don't mean to. I never cut off my guests. I want to help here because thank you
yeah,
for even sharing your opinions on that. I think that's the opinion held by the vast majority of people. Right now, they debate when that timeline might exist within the
sure.
womb, but generally speaking, I think that's a reasonable enough standpoint. My point was not necessarily to put you on the spot for that. And again, I appreciate your transparency and sharing your own opinions. It was more to equate this idea that, like, even the Roe v. Wade thing, right? And I'm not arguing right or wrong for any of it. I'm just stating some things that have happened. The reason that Roe v. Wade got overturned is because of the idea that this is not constitutionally protected, so we don't have to uphold this here. So then that's the thing. It's like, would something like this amendment, this 28th Amendment, would this then apply instantly to things like abortion or COVID shots or whatever? Or would there still be further debate about what actually defines a medical issue and a personal choice? It was more the concept of how we define these things, because I would like a clear definition. I think all of us would. I think it would end a lot of debates and maybe, unfortunately, ruined family parties where people started talking politics. But I don't think we have these definitions right now. And I can see, even as someone who chose not to get the COVID shot, I do think that there are otherwise amazing, very nice people out there that really meant it when they said, hey, Evan, I don't think you're doing the right thing by not getting this, because now you could be affecting someone else. Again, I don't agree, but I see where they're coming from. So I guess it's just like, how does this amendment deal with defining the things? That was the main point I was trying to get to.
Well, you have to look also at the logic behind what the person is saying.
Mhm.
When somebody says, you didn't get vaccinated, therefore you're endangering me, it's sort of like, well, I'm not sick, so how am I endangering you? I'm not getting anything. So instead, what they're really saying is that you're not being a good citizen because you're not doing what the government says you should do. So that is a whole different thing. And then we have the other problem. And this is where you do say, like, oh, wealth can be very, very harmful because it wants to retain its wealth so badly that it will lie and it will do everything it can to keep things going. So uh, once you start seeing that um, something that is done by the government that uh, is contrary to medical freedom, that is contrary to logic and contrary to uh, informed consent, then you just have to say we have to protect.
Mhm.
We have to protect people because um, this is one of the problems. I mean, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been called a conspiracy theorist, and yet in a lot of people's minds, he's actually a whistleblower. So you have, two different takes psychologically as
Right.
to what is going on there. And I think that um, being a good person versus doing what is scientifically correct. I mean, when you're told not to go out into the sunlight because there's a virus floating around, it's like, wow, the sunlight's the best thing. It kills viruses, it boosts your vitamin D, all those things that are so important for your immune system.
So yeah,
So
if we're getting informed to do things that are just outright asinine, that's where you'd like to start. At least we can't be telling people not to go in the sun because of a virus. I think I'd hope we could all get behind that.
yes, and the industry, the pharmaceutical industry, is billions of dollars when you look at just statins, and now they realize that a lot of Alzheimer's is a result of the statins because of its destruction of coenzyme Q10. Um, this is just one aspect of it, but of course it covers much more. Um, what we have is that the government is not at this stage looking out for us the way it should. And um, let's see, there's the Vaccine Injury Act of 1986, which said that manufacturers cannot be sued for injury or death caused by a vaccine, claiming vaccines are not safe and effective as a defense, but saying they are when being used as an experiment on general population and without informed consent, it's okay. And then we have the Patriot Act of 2001, which provided the Emergency Use Act of a military intervention and the emergency use authorization of countermeasures, which is what they then used for the modified RNA. And then you have the PrEP Act of 2005, which provided immunity from suit and liability under the federal state laws. You find that it also approved forced medication and vaccination countermeasures, and it denied informed consent. The FDA right now, the spring of 2022, removed VAERS reports, Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System. They removed reports that had to do with COVID. They adopted future framework allowing reformulation of shots without clinical trials. And that was against their leadership and the best people. Why? Why would you go against good science? And then effective January 23rd, 2024, the FDA said, we will not be required to have informed consent. This is a certified statement, 88228 of the Government Publishing Office. And they said, well, we will only do it when it's something that's harmless. Well, if it's harmless, then tell the person. Don't hide anything. So, yeah, there's just so much that has to be done in order to protect people from abuse and betrayal. Because not only that happens, but you get dispossessed. Get dispossessed of your jobs, of your earnings, of your possessions. Yeah, it's just so important. And we have the treaties. Everybody knows Tedros Ghebreyesus, the director of the World Health Organization, and Bill Gates are going around to countries and just saying bravo, because you're including some new laws which include not just vaccination but surveillance of people's health and surveillance of their movements, a lot of other things involved. And it just recently, they were in Asia. This is on May 5th, 2025, at the Philanthropy Asia Summit 2025. The Gates Foundation would open a new Asia office in Singapore, supported by the Singapore Economic Development Board. And one of the things that had been changed by the government of Singapore is that it declared the government's right to force vaccination whenever they declare it necessary for public health. And citizens who decline government-ordered vaccinations can face 6 to 12 months in jail and fines $7,000 to $15,000.
Wow.
Now that's in Singapore. Will it happen in this country? Well, it's just that these are treaties, and of course, right now, We're temporarily out of the World Health Organization, so we'll see, how that's handled. But there is a battle. There's no doubt that there's a battle, uh, and it's not good for citizens. But we do have to realize that it takes away our freedom, and we need to protect that. And in protecting that, we also protect medical choice. And once you protect medical choice, then you have to also protect the freedom of medicine. So I have a secondary uh, goal, which is to create a department of um, medical modalities and bionutrition.
Okay.
I think it should not be under the FDA. Nutrition being under the FDA is like putting the chicken in the fox's den, because the FDA has made it very clear that its role is to protect the interests and the profits of the pharmaceutical industry. That's one of the reasons it's there. It wasn't that originally when it was the Department of Chemistry, but that is how it has evolved. And as a result, it is also what people call a captured industry. So we need to have a rule of law, and this rule of law has to include medical freedom.
Michael, in terms of how we can get involved, I'd like to start that part of the conversation because I listen. I don't know a ton about the legal side and getting these things actually in place, but something tells me this is a pretty big endeavor. I don't think it's as impossible as maybe the average person would believe, but I also would imagine it's a huge endeavor to get all of this moving here. So, with this 28th, the Medical Freedom Amendment, where are we at in the process, and how much more would it actually take to get this in place?
It would take a tremendous amount of effort and work throughout the nation. Uh, Not necessarily everybody, but at least 10% of the population.
Okay.
If you had 10% of the population, you could at least get it out there enough that media would pick it up, and it would become an issue that people could could now discuss openly and recognize as a problem and also a solution. So ratifying an amendment, though, is a big job. Uh, let's see, there are two ways. One is to have the United States Constitution under Article 5 with 2/3 of both houses of Congress voting to propose the amendment. Second is to have the state legislators, 2/3 of state legislatures propose it. And then from there, it has to be ratified by 3/4 of the state legislators. So you can see, like the Voting Act, it got passed within about a year and a half as an amendment. Amazing. But most amendments, they take a period of sometimes 7 or more years. And um, some of them never make it, of course. So that's part of it. Um, the other thing is to support it is how can people get involved?
Mhm.
Um, the National Health Federation website provides a campaign that anyone can use by clicking current campaigns button on their homepage, and it will go directly to uh, a campaign that you can fill out and send to your legislators. Um, Scott Tips, the NHF president, and the Board of Governors have unanimously endorsed the amendment, and they are also uh, promoting it. There are some other organizations that have also gotten on board, but it's a slow process. And so this is wonderful to be able to uh, talk with you about it. Uh, I personally think that there's another way, which is writing letters.
Mhm.
And I mean actually a written letter in an envelope with a postage stamp, because those are actually looked at very carefully compared to all the other things are people signing on to that sort of stuff. And so I would say that there is presently a small slot of time with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as the Secretary of Health and Human Services. So I would suggest writing directly to him and also to President Trump. I mean, if President Trump wants to be really, really known for his presidency, if he endorsed and asked for the Medical Freedom Amendment, that would be a big thing. I've written today. I wrote a short letter to Secretary Kennedy, and just to give you an idea, I think it should always be personal, and I think it should deal with any kind of health situation that you feel really needs to be protected. So I just said, as Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services, your leadership directs our government's role to improve our health and at the same time protect our individual uniqueness and protection from unnecessary and coercive medical intervention. However, there is more than ever a great danger of harm as wealth girds its limbs for battle to maintain its role of authority and protection of wealth. This has become a plague upon us that needs righting and justice. Our relationship with our healthcare provider is a special and unique one that should take priority over any governmental medical intervention. History has proven damage and suffering when one medical choice is enforced upon us all. It has also proven beyond any doubt the necessity for true facts as absolutely necessary for informed consent. Government should never create or endorse medical tyranny and lying. Government's role is to protect us from despotism and not to abuse and betray us with injustices, propaganda, and dispossessions. It is with this heavy heart that cries out for all those who have suffered that we must take up the most difficult of labors. Wealth is a dangerous state of being. The mind creates corporations for protection and laws which seek protection against legal retribution and retention of its wealth, no matter the consequences. The results, as you have well pointed out, are catastrophic, painfully so. If we are not to have freedom, protection, and choice, then we are to enter into our own government's created holocaust. And then I ask him to read. I have a whole bunch of documents and so forth that I will include with the letter. But this is my personal feeling regard to the Medical Freedom Amendment. But I have found that almost everyone I've talked to have endorsed the Medical Freedom Amendment and have their own personal way of how they view it and what it means to them.
Sure. It should be like a free speech or freedom of religion thing where like 99% of us do agree on those things, right? Like we at least agree with the concept. Do we agree on what should be said, what should be practiced? No, we'll probably debate till the end of time on those things. But 99% of us, except a very I respectfully say this, but I do mean it. I think a very fringe group is against things like freedom of speech at this point and stuff like that. But most of us want that. And I see this as being the same thing here. I think this is something that almost any reasonable person could get behind. How it applies to you in your life might look a little bit different. Your top priority might be a little bit different than mine or a little bit different than Michael's. But yeah, I would think that this is a common sense thing, or at least I would hope it is. And so I want to follow up with this by asking, I never ever want to promote some type of fear mongering or doomsday type of thing on this show, but I do think it's important to get realistic. So I wanted to ask you, how important do you think it is to act right now? Because frankly, the way, this is just my opinion, I'm not saying I'm right, but the way that I see this in my relatively short life here on this earth, I look at my at least adult years, which has been all of 11 adult years at this point, 18 to 29. And I do not find that my life is freer than it was at 18. I'm not saying it got dramatically worse, but there's definitely been some changes. And then I see the implementation of advanced technology, AI, increased ability to monitor stuff. And as you pointed out, you mentioned so many different things that have been put into law that are not in favor of our medical rights or choices. So to me, I look at this and I say, all right, I'm not smart enough to know when the gig's up here, and we're really kind of screwed, for lack of a better word. But I get this sense in my gut that if we don't do something quick, that time is probably coming soon. So I wanted to ask you your opinion. You've been in the space longer than me, obviously. Do you think it is very important to act now if we want, a good future for our kids and our grandkids, or do we have more time than I think?
I think it's essential that we act now. We're very fortunate that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is there. Some people don't like him. Some people think all kinds of stuff. But as they listen to him and see how he's approaching things, he's not one size fits all, or that one group is all wrong. He's looking at it. Let's go through science. Let's really see what's going on. People got really upset because he said, these mRNA vaccines, no more, no more. He's saying it because from the very beginning of testing with them, they've been unsuccessful. So it's based on science. It's not based on his opinion that, I don't like them. It's like, no, we've seen they're not successful and that they've actually caused a lot of harm. You have to remember that more people have died from the vaccine than all other vaccinations combined since VAERS has been around. I mean, I have the statistics. Japan is outraged by the deception that's happened. So this is a really important time, and let's face it, it is an opportunity that we may not have in the future, and we just have to really guard. And I think the American public is capable enough that, if it doesn't happen right now, like I wanted to, we need to move forward with it no matter what. And if it takes longer, okay. But it is something that endangers the health of our children as well. If you've had any personal experiences with things, and the number of people who have medically, you realize that we need to have options. It's really important to have medical freedom and freedom of medicine.
Absolutely. I hope people take it seriously because, guys, you know what? Right, what we're doing right now and what we're proposing right now is the least path of resistance. Right? It's actually a privilege to be able to go out and write letters and have a voice online and do all this kind of stuff. What I see that I get a little worried about, if I'm being honest, is as the technology gets better, and this is the reason that I mentioned the digital stuff and the AI, monitoring gets better. So what happens? Let's say you propose a ridiculous law tomorrow that even like 80% of people aren't going to follow. Well, that's great, except if the government can monitor everything that you're doing. Because if they can monitor everything that you're doing, then the first person to go away and say, hey, I'm not following that law that 80% of us disagree with, well, you kind of get, slammed down. You get slapped on the wrist and told that, you're bad and you're going to follow our way. And then you got to pray and hope that other people are willing to stand up and be there with you, which I don't know that I'd bank on in this generation. I think all these chemicals have gotten to our testosterone levels, and I don't know that I'm on the same level as the founding fathers here. So this is the path of least resistance. This is the best way to do it, and you don't have to be violent or crazy. You get to write letters. You get to have a voice. You get to vote. That's a good thing. I don't want to see what happens because to your point about America in particular, I do think there's a large portion of us here. I know I can speak for myself. I'm at least one of them that I would never go for certain laws and abide to certain things that would be, proposed by the government. I've already seen them proposed. Whether or not they get enacted is a different thing. But you don't want to get to that point. You just want to get to the point where those things don't exist to begin with. I have so many other questions I want to ask you. We're already at the 50-minute mark. So if you don't mind, I'll steal another like 5 to 10 minutes of your time. And of course, I want to shout out where people can find this. I just have one more question for you, Michael. And I'm feeling very pulled to ask this because I won't, I obviously don't share this for someone else, but you were mentioning, you mentioned how old the picture that we shared was. So I know how old you are right now, right? And I'm thinking like it's so cool to be able to talk to someone who has basically lived like multiple of my lives. And here's what I'm asking. I, as someone who's is fairly patriotic, right? Not in a brain dead way. It's not like a sports team. I don't say, oh, rah, rah, go America, and we're the most perfect place that's ever existed and nothing's wrong with us. I don't believe that. But I think it's important to back your country and try to make it better and have some pride from where you're from. I perceive us, I don't know when it is, but my 29-year-old brain perceives us as once having this amazing spirit that was the American spirit. And I feel like that's dying. And I feel like I've seen that more and more where, like, if our founding fathers were here, they would have been at war already, with some of the stuff that's happened in our country. And yet we've kind of allowed a lot of these things to slide. So I wanted to ask you, in your lifetime, have you seen that kind of American rebellious, we're going to do it our way spirit kind of fade? And if so, is there any major time or major event where you really started to see that begin?
Well, of course, I think of the Vietnam War, and uh, from early on, I was opposed to it just because I knew the history of France there and what was going on, and it was one of those situations. Um, you know, you love your country because of the people
Sure.
and the soil and everything like that. Um, I gave my my whole self to the Peace Corps. So I was in Ethiopia and Eritrea for 2 years, and so I felt that I had served my government and I had done a good job. I did it both in science and in agriculture, and so when you have that and then you come back home and the draft board says you're up next to be drafted,
Mm.
you go like, really? I've been helping people and now, okay, but why are we in Vietnam and what's going on there? And is it going to be successful? And is it the right thing to do? So almost every case, it's a matter of being open enough to look at all sides of a situation and to listen to it. Ultimately, I didn't get drafted. I turned 26. I was in law school at the time, and that was great. But law was not my calling. Health is, and it always will be. But at the same time, I did study constitutional law as an undergraduate uh, with Robert Wilson. And for me, uh, you know, this is a great country and we have an incredible history.
Mhm.
And if you really read history about what went on and how people fought back and forth, the Bill of Rights were not in the original document. It took states saying like, hey, wait a second, we've been out there fighting and we get nothing. What's going on? Everything is about business and economics and who does what and so forth. And uh, you know, there was always a thing between we need we need a king, which John Adams was not opposed to that idea, even though later on he changed his mind. But there was also always the thing that we have to have a representative government. So we have to have a democracy, but at the same time, we have to make sure that the democracy doesn't become so uh, so ill-informed that it starts doing stupid things. So this is why education is so important. And like health should be in every school from grade, 3 on up, and just people learning about their body and eating right and protecting themselves and so forth. There's just so much that can be done because this country has that ability. It's just the idea of who's controlling the landscape.
Gotcha. Okay. So it sounds like we've had some issues creeping in for a long time, and then that kind of brings us to the point that we were just mentioning before this. I think that's coming to a head, folks. There's a certain point where you got to be a little bit careful. I don't want to get us down a rabbit hole here because we do have to wrap this up. But I mean, I look at how about this? I'll just plant a seed for you guys. Look up how a country like China monitors its citizens and when they go out of line, what the consequences are for that. And the reason I mention China is people be like, well, I'm not in China. Yeah, guys, that's the second most populated country in the world, though, right behind India. They were the most populated for a while. That's not a small country. That's not a country that lacks power. So to be so confident that that can't happen in other places, I don't know that I would be so sure of that. And guess what? Some people like those things. There is a small group, especially in my generation, that likes those things. And if you like that, you have every right to like that. I would highly recommend fully looking into that, though. And I don't think the majority of us like it. So just remember, you have power with voting, you have power with your voice. I know people don't like sharing stuff on Facebook because like, oh, I don't want to get into that there. It's like, well, we're going to have to get into it eventually. So I'd rather do it on my Facebook or my Instagram and just let people know what's going on. Let them decide if they want to get into this. And then whatever decision they make is theirs. So my final thing here will be the National Health Federation. Huge shout out to them. I and myself and Reed both donated to the organization. I never get on here and talk about donations that I'm making or not making. I don't think I've ever said that in 433 podcasts up until today. The only reason I'm saying that to you guys is because I know that, especially our tribe, the FDN trainees and graduates, you guys do trust me, hopefully, and I would not put my name on something and recommend donating to something or joining something that I don't fully believe in. If you're resonating with what Michael shared today and you think he's on the right track, then that would definitely be something to go get some information about. Michael, the final thing for you then, my friend, would be where's a website that they can find the amendment? And maybe it's the same place, but where can they find more about you as well?
Well, I have several websites. So there's the medicalfreedomamendment.org. So it's you have it there. I also have a website. It's my commercial website because I sell Rayguard products that I import from Germany. They're for protection against electromagnetic radiation pollution. And that's rayguardprotect.com. And I have another website called the healthfreedomparty.org, which is just kind of an overview. And I have a Substack as well, michaellevesque.substack.com. I'm on the internet quite a bit, actually. So, and as a store owner, we were one of the very first stores to ever be on the internet. And our idea was always education, not necessarily selling products, because I didn't want to compete with some little store down in some other place where they, and it wasn't until Amazon and those got into it that we just said like, oh my goodness, we're going to have to change, our approach. But that's been a real sad story, the number of small independent health food stores that have closed down as a result of the changes that we've experienced.
I have a signature question for you. I'm going to modify it a little bit today, and this will be our final thing here. And by the way, guys, I'm sorry that I didn't get to the chat today, but if you guys did enjoy this, I see that you're very lively there. So if you want to drop a thank you for Michael, I'd appreciate that. I know he would as well. And it lets us know that this is the type of content that you want us to bring on. So if you like this today, please drop that in the chat. Michael, my signature question for you, it's normally what is the one thing that people can do for their health? I'd like to modify that today to this. if there was one thing that you could get all of us viewers and listeners to do in terms of supporting medical freedom, what would that be? I don't know if it's a specific donation. I don't know if it's joining a specific organization, reading something, but what is the one thing, if you're like, I could just get them all to do this for medical freedom, you'd get us to do what?
I would get you to handwrite a letter to the Secretary Kennedy in Human Health Services, and make it heartfelt, and also explaining why you support the Medical Freedom Amendment.
You know what? Fair enough. And guys, I will get that done on my end. I'll always be transparent with you. So
Evan,
I'll have that shared for, yes.
I just want to interrupt you and just say
Please.
that if there was one thing for health, it
Okay.
would be probiotics.
Thank you. All right, nice. We got a 2-for-1. I will get my letter done though, and I'm good. Again, I'll always be honest with you guys. I do support these things, but I've never done that. So if our guest is going to take the time out of his day to come on here after all these years of research, and that is the one thing you'd get us to do, I think that's a fair ask. So I will make sure to get mine done. And then when we have the next podcast with whatever guest that is, I will share that I got it done. And hopefully that encourages the troops to hop along here. Michael, I just want to say, and I mean this quite seriously and sincerely, I wanted to say thank you, not only for what you're doing for the medical freedom side, but just for being in this industry for so long. I'm not here to share my story today, obviously, but the short of it is, I had all these different health conditions throughout my childhood. I mean, they greatly affected me, both mental and physical health issues. And I was pretty much screwed for a long time with health. And there was a time where I did not know if I'd be able to get out of this. And when I get to meet people like Reed Davis, our founder, when I get to meet people like you, when I get to meet people like Scott Tips, and I'm like, there was people out there that were fighting for me, right? Maybe not individually for me, but you were fighting for me as a concept. You were fighting for me as a group before I even was alive. I don't know. That means a lot to me. That's very cool to me to know that there's individuals out there, because that's what I feel like I'm doing now. That's the only way to return the favor, is to be out here sharing this information, fighting for others that are sick right now. They have no idea what's going on. And then if they're lucky enough to stumble upon a podcast like this or someone else that we recommend, it's pretty cool. And it's a good way to live your life. It makes you a little stressed sometimes because you want to be able to share this information with everyone overnight, but it definitely gives you a lot of purpose every day when you wake up. So I mean that sincerely. Just thank you for years of dedication to this.
Oh, thank you too. I think that it's wonderful that somebody of your age is so involved in all this. And I was looking at the website and all the interviews that have been done. My hat's off to you guys. It's wonderful. Sharing is it. It's really great. Thank you.
Guys,
yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say the medicalfreedomamendment.org. Please, at the very least, check that out. It takes 2 seconds to share on your social media. And if you're watching something like this, I'm sure you have some like-minded friends. So just a final thank you.